Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I am Ron Luce, and I am joined by a very different guest this evening. As everybody knows, the Dingers podcast joined On Tap Sports Network. So we have a brother show here now on the Cubs side of the house with the Dingers boys, and I am joined by Dingers' own Jake Bunowski, aka Baseball Booge, on Twitter. Jake, how are you doing, buddy? First off, crack 'em and happy Friday to you, my friend. How are things as the week comes to a close, man?
Well, man, you said brother podcast, and I think that's better because it's all masculine energy between our podcasts. I've been saying sister podcast because I feel like that's what people usually say about.
I think that's like the technical term.
Yeah. But like no feminine energy. I'd be like, listen, hey, if we have any females out there that are listening, female Cubs fans, like love to have you on. Mix things up. I know there are a lot of great female Cubs fans out there. And like, let's get you on. I know like Rachel from the UK, she's been on podcasts before.
She's been on our show.
I'm getting off the rails already, but I'm doing all right, man. I'm glad you reached out. My wife is working. She's a night shift nurse. So I'm sitting around doing jack shit. Just playing MLB The Show. Almost pitched a perfect game with Kyle Hendricks.
Sick. Love that.
Yeah, some nobody hit a home run off of a hanging curveball in the eighth, 2 outs. It is what it is. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I've had this Cubs itch to talk baseball today, man. Like it's just I've been watching a ton of CubsCon stuff and just formulating my own thoughts on things. And we exchanged some of the things that we've had on our minds that we're going to dive into here on the show beforehand. But agree, man. Just quickly on your point about the ladies. Rachel has actually been on Cubs on Tap. According to her,
that's what I thought.
We were her first podcast appearance, so I would like to make note of that. That's pretty cool. But yeah, also at Windy City Mama on IG. She's pretty popular around here. Her dad and her were at CubsCon. Tyler and Joey actually met them and interviewed them. Not knowing, and she was talking, we exchanged DMs a little bit, and she's talking how her dad's, been a Cubs fan for over 50 years, and he's got, so many stories. And so we're like, we need to get on the pod. So we're going to have another guest, big, a female Cubs fan, which I know we're excited about. But dude, I'm ready. I am absolutely ready because, for starters, as Jeremiah says here, I'm going to wear a mankini. So, it's going to be something, let me tell you. But dude, I'm ready to talk Cubs baseball. I really am. And, I think a great place for us to start is with your bio name, my friend. And you have Madrigal for 3B up there. We're going to talk about a host of things tonight. So bear with us, folks. We're going to go all over the place here in probably the course of the next hour or so. But dude, I mean, pitch the case, man. I know you are like the Nick Madrigal champion. And so I need your best, like, running for office speech about why Madrigal should be third baseman this year.
Yeah, man. It is well known that I am the official president of the unofficial Ian Happ podcast fan club. I'm not the president of the Compound podcast, unfortunately. Everybody knows I love Nico Horner. Dingers championed him all last year. And look, regardless of what ends up happening, I'm on the Madrigal train. And the reason for that is I am a firm believer in prospect pedigree. I'm a big fantasy baseball guy. I track players. I am obsessed with prospects. Okay. Not just the Cubs Wow, prospects. It's been a long week, apparently.
It has been a long week, man.
As we talked about before the show, it took us a long time to recover from CubsCon. But so Nick Madrigal, he has that prospect pedigree, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing is, I don't think that he's really been given a fair opportunity to let it shake out yet. I don't believe he has broken 1,000 plate appearances yet at the major league level. Obviously, he's coming off of a massive hamstring injury and repair. And I talked about it on Dingers on Monday. I think last year we saw at the beginning of the season, while yes, he theoretically was healthy, there's a mental hurdle that you have to let yourself get over to physically, like, think of it like Bulls fans listening right now. Remember when Derrick Rose got hurt and he had to come back and he came out publicly? He was like, yeah, my body's just like, can't let myself play at the level that I was at yet. Like there was a mental block, right? So Madrigal hasn't been quoted, to my knowledge, talking about that, but it's quite clear if you watch him play. Like if you go back and watch, no one's going to do that, but if you were to go back and watch Madrigal highlights or lowlights, if we're being honest, from the beginning of last season, it was very evident that the guy just did not feel comfortable. And I really think it was a mental block because at every level that he's played, he's hit over 300. The guy puts the ball in play. He's fast. Before the injury, he was in the 75th percentile sprint speed, which is great. You want speed on this team. I think that he, we talked about this as well, that maybe you guys talked about it on the Wednesday pod. Everything is melting together now, but we wanted when we still had Rizzo, Javi, and Bryant on the team, we were begging for a contact-oriented bat, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Now people would say like, okay, well, we've got Nico, and it's like, yeah. Okay, we have Nico, but one contact-oriented bat in the lineup isn't enough. And I actually think that Nico is going to skew a little bit more toward like if everything pans out perfectly for Nico, he's a guy that's driving balls into the gaps. So he's a doubles hitter into the alleys, right?
Right.
Madrigal is going to be a flare hitter. Like he's going to be hitting. He's like obviously I'm not comparing him to Ichiro, but the type of hits that Ichiro would get is what you can expect from Madrigal. Now, I don't know if he has it in him to be the everyday third baseman. He probably does not. Okay. We know that his arm strength is brutal. I don't know what percentile that is, but it's low in terms of the rest of the league. His range is limited, but I also felt better. Like I didn't think his defense was that bad at second base last year. I don't think, we like Sox fans like, oh, this dude can't play second base. It's like, actually, he made some good plays at second base. And a lot of it could be credited to like correct positioning, but hey, that's the game. And it wasn't in the shift, a lot of the plays that I remember. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, man. Like people will say that we need a power bat at third base, but like, yes, traditionally you do, but this is a transition year. It's still a transition year. I want the team to compete. I do think the team will compete, but you got to see what you have in Madrigal. I hope the guy gets extended playing time one way or another. I hope it doesn't take an injury, right? But I do hope that he sees playing time. I hope that the dude is on fire in spring training. Yeah. I think the reason why I'm so adamant about it, aside from being a believer in pedigree, is the dude's an underdog, right? Like he's the little guy. And I was never a power hitter. I was always undersized. I played middle infield. And I don't know. I guess I can kind of see myself in Madrigal, so there's a little bit of that. But yeah, man, I just think
you're taller than Madrigal, though.
I am taller. Yeah, taller than Madrigal, but I'm slightly built, and when I was in good shape, I was fast. So I don't know, man. I feel like I'm rambling, but what do you think? Like, what are your thoughts on how Madrigal does or does not fit in with this team in 23?
No, and I'll tell you what, like I was actually just having this conversation with a good buddy of mine, a guy that if all works out, because I'm going to try my damnedest to sweet talk as many of you Dinger guys to coming to opening day with us. But one of my good buddies who's going to be at opening day with us again this year was with us last year. His name's Joe. He and I actually just talked last night. I hadn't seen him in a while. We were able to meet up for a little bit, and the first thing we got into in the start of the night was Cubs baseball because I had the itch. And he's a big Madrigal guy. He actually has a Madrigal jersey. Like you two would be quick friends just over Nick Madrigal alone. And we were talking about it, and we were discussing his pros and his cons. And, I said, I was like, I can see the value in a Nick Madrigal player. Because in a perfect world where he is performing more like that August version that we saw of him last season, he is a 300 hitter. He is a 370-ish on-base guy. He's just not going to give you that slug, right? That is like the one very glaring need for him at the plate. He's not going to give you the slug. And then the question, like you said, with third base, right, is how good is his range at third base, which I think with a Dansby Swanson maybe you make the argument that he's got a little bit of extra help, the
Right.
arm strength being the biggest thing. But I will say too, one of my biggest things was I never really realized how fast he was. I think he needs to maybe improve a little bit as a base runner. But he's got that speed, like you said, in him. I really want, like, you've convinced me now that like Madrigal brings value to this team this year. And I
Yes.
thought there was an opportunity where he could, right? Maybe in my opinion, that value comes through kind of a rotational role where maybe he's not
Right.
playing every day, but he's every other day type thing. I could see him getting a lot of tick as a DH as well, because
Yeah.
of if he's performing like he should, which it's a 300 hitter, it's a 370 on base guy. Like, you give me that, to your point, right? You need the contact oriented guys. You need guys on base. You want guys like Dansby Swanson to drive and runs, Bellinger to drive and runs. This is also the year too where we saw the Cubs run a lot last year. And this is like been one of my hot takes / like big predictions that I will like put money on. The Cubs are going to be one of the top running teams in baseball this season, in my opinion. They were one last year already with a significantly less athletic roster, in my opinion.
Yep.
Madrigal maybe finds a way. I think the biggest challenge for him with third base will truly be the arm strength. I think he could get away
Yes.
with the range. He's not, obviously, the height maybe is one thing that concerns a lot of people. You think of third baseman, right? You think of, big 6'5" guys that are kind of, lanky and can do that big, 2 steps to the left or 2 steps to the right and get that glove out and make a play type thing. But maybe you're able to get away with a little more of that because of a Dansby Swanson at shortstop. And I think they will give him a fair shake. I'm just really intrigued to see how often he gets to play there, because I also think in the same breath, because backing up your point earlier, Jake, you said, right, he hasn't seen 1,000 total plate appearances. He's only had 552 plate appearances in the major leagues. Like,
That's too low.
that's
Way
nothing.
too low.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
nothing. I mean, that's half the number that you threw out there.
And I will say, like, the reason I say 1,000 plate appearances is that typically scouts talk about 1,000 plate appearances being like, that's when you know what a player is. Like, that's the threshold. 1,000 major league plate appearances tells you that you can make a conclusion at that point. So that's why I use that number.
No, and I think that's a great point, right? Baseball, to me, of all the major sports, like, every sport has development as a part of their game. But to me, baseball is the one that has the greatest emphasis on development, right? Like, there's development in basketball to a fault. Guys need to grow into their body, grow into their game. You can make the same argument for hockey as well, right? Guys get bigger and stronger as they get older, and they develop more to a man's game. You could even make that case in the NFL. There's some guys, especially at like the quarterback position, right? Guys take 2-3 years to develop into that spot. I really do think, that baseball is further, right, along of the development is super hardcore in baseball, and it has to be because of the nature of the game. I'm telling you right now, man, like, again, I think there's room for him to bring value. I don't know how much it'll be at third base, because I think they want to see a lot of Christopher Morel too, and what they have there with him. But I'll tell you what, man, you've convinced me further to give Madrigal a chance. Like, I was very at the beginning, like, yeah, he could stick around as a bench bat. Maybe don't give him a ton of time. And then I was like, maybe if like Mancini or one of these other guys who are probably going to be your more regular DHs struggles a little bit out the gate, maybe you give Madrigal a couple games at DH and see if he can flare, go 3 for 5 in a game and help you score a couple of runs because of some of that speed and that ability to, bring that flare bat and get on base and do some good things. And we got some good comments here too, real quick, before I flip it back to you, Jake. And thanks for everybody that's jumping in here. Our boy Mitch through the Dingers YouTube channel. He says, I see myself in Madrigal in college. He says, I played exactly like him. And he quoted that up. Yeah, 552, barely over half, exactly what we said there. But then we got Juice here in the comments saying, Madrigal is a steakhouse butter on the steak this season. If the steak is cooked well, you don't need it, but it's nice to have.
That's great.
Jake, I will tell you right now, like, I know we've been longtime friends. Like, everybody's like, oh, Dingers is a part of On Tap. Yeah. But that relationship goes way back. Like, Cubs on Tap and Dingers, we've been friends for a long time. We play in a fantasy baseball league now together. Like, we've known each other. If there's one thing you guys will learn about Juice and on-air presence, he is the king of making analogies to food. Don't ask
Oh,
me
I've
why.
heard him. I've heard him. I'm glad he dropped in. And yeah.
And he even said, had to drop a food metaphor if it's a Cubs show, because that's his forte. But man, I'll tell you, I'm really sincerely honest, Jake. Like, I think you have sold me, who was very much a Madrigal skeptic. There was a couple times I'm pretty sure I said to put him on the next firework and send him to the sun.
I saw those tweets.
Send him to the sun. I'm a little more willing now to give him a chance because of the argument you made, man. I again, like you said, I think again, and it's something that I'll go into a little depth more here later, but my idea of what the Cubs baseball is this season is running, put the ball in play and using your athleticism. Like, he's a guy that can, in that category, in my opinion, bring a lot of value.
I'll wrap it with this, and then you mentioned Morel, so I want to talk about him next.
Yeah,
but I'm looking at line drive rate, okay, and line drive rate, like the league leader in line drive rate last year was Freddie Freeman. Yeah, was Freddie Freeman with 27.5%. That's absurdly high. Like,
yeah, that's almost a third of the time. It's a
which is nuts. Like, that's line drives are premium quality contact, right? You're barreling the ball.
Barrel the ball, baby. Yep, absolutely.
So it rounds out the top 30 with Yordan Alvarez at 21.6%. Now let me get back to Madrigal's page, because Madrigal lines the ball well. Like, he's not going to hit the ball hard, but last year, and obviously, this isn't a very good sample size, but 21% line drive rate. 2020, he had a 26% line drive rate. Low fly ball rate, under 20%. But for a guy like him with his speed, you want him hitting the ball low. Because he's not going to hit the ball out of the park, especially at Wrigley in the spring. This dude's not hitting home runs. Was it Jeremiah that said he dropped in that, he's got a pair of home runs too, meaning Madrigal's got two home runs. So
they're there.
The final thought that I'll leave with it is he could be a Tommy La Stella type off the bench, right? Like, if you need someone to come in a contact situation late in the game, he's the one that you put in. You got a runner at third with one out, and you need to get that guy in. Madrigal's on the bench. Take him off the bench. Doesn't matter who's on the mound. Madrigal's on the bench. He'll put something in play, and he's probably not going to hit it in the air, right? So I'm glad that you see it. I hope more Cubs fans do. I hope he proves his worth in spring training and gets some people like amped up, because he is a depth piece, right? Like, I think on a competitive team, especially one with Nico Hoerner, who could end up being the best second baseman in the league next year. Like,
say it again.
Totally. I mean, it's Marcus Semien and who else, right? Like, they just announced today that Jazz Chisholm is probably going to be playing center field. So Jazz is second base.
And he low-key might win a Gold Glove.
For real. And like it's going to be better. We're going to see more Jazz because playing in the outfield is easier on the body too. So that's good. That's good for baseball. Yeah. But yeah, we've spent 20 minutes talking about Nick Madrigal, but that's my 2 cents. Now you mentioned Morel, and I think Morel and Madrigal have similar, this year, that's right, Jeremiah. It's still weird, right? Like, it is 2023 now. I do mean this year. We're in the off season. Everything is convoluted. Okay. So yes, in 2023, I will talk the year specifically. I tweeted it out earlier today. I was listening to the Athletic Baseball Show with Derek Van Riper and Keith Law, former MLB GM. Great show. Those guys do a great job over there. And of course, it's more of a national show. But I'm really interested in national podcasts when they have to talk about the Cubs, right? Because there's not, like, inherently there should not be any bias. Like, we are Cubs fans. We are eternal optimists, right? That's how we were raised,
It's what keeps us alive, man.
Right. So we're going to go into each season being like, oh yeah, I'm high on Madrigal. Like, he could be something, right? They talked about Christopher Morel, and their analysis on Morel was that he's going to probably continue to be a lower contact, high strikeout, 3 true outcomes kind of guy. But the value that he brings is he has defensive versatility, and he is an exciting player, and he does hit the ball hard. So they basically put it that if Morel is our everyday starting third baseman, that's a problem. Like that's you probably don't want that. Now, granted, he's still only like 23 years old, 20, maybe he turns
Still super
24
young.
this year. Jeremiah in the comments, I had to jump on this really quick. He said, also, this is an aside. Also, Rare L take what Talking Baseball said about the Cubs offseason. We're going to get to that. I'm glad Jeremiah said something about that. But Morel should be a depth piece on this team. And he'd be a very good depth piece if everything breaks correctly, right? So I don't know. Who do you like? Do you still think that Wisdom is going to get the majority of playing time at third base this season?
I don't know. And
Yeah.
I think I would have said yes to that question with Wisdom if they didn't say we're going to give Madrigal a shot at third. Right? Like I think crazy thing, like I think it could be a three-headed monster type deal, right? Where it's truly like the position in the lineup where maybe they play kind of the like matchup card, right? Maybe where Madrigal, this is a pitcher where we need to just get some contact on him. Madrigal's in tonight playing there. We can take the big swing and miss with a guy like Wisdom for the power. All right, Patty Wise is playing 3 tonight, and then maybe you get some of the times where Morel is just, they need to get him in the lineup and he's going to play third tonight. And then Morel plays another night in center and then he plays at second and then he plays at short. And then then he does kind of the Ben Zobrist rotation and just plays a bunch of places. But, it almost feels like they're putting together a third baseman with 3 people because to Mitch's point here, he says in his 3 MLB seasons, Madrigal is who he's talking about here, is top 3 in contact percentage, minimum 100 plate appearances. 2022, he was third with 90.9%. He was first in 2021 with a 91.8% before the injury. And then in 2020, he was a second in 92.4. Like that's a guy that's going to put, there's your big contact guy, right? Yeah. Then you got Patty Wise, who brings that elite power and a pretty decent glove. And then you got Morel, who's kind of like the athletic freak. And it's like they're trying to build like your perfect third baseman with 3 players. So I really think they're going to let these guys compete because that's probably the one position on this team, Jake, that I could confidently sit here and say they don't have a true answer at. Like the outfield is set. It's Belly, it's Hap, it's Seiya. Short and second are set. It's the as I think as Juice said, it's the Vampire Diaries show with Nico and Dansby Swanson in the middle. Your first base is kind of just a big clusterfuck, but at least know Hosmer and Mancini are going to rotate and give, and if Mervis is the young guy and he's ready, he's going to get ticked there too. And then we all know what the catching situation is, and it's something we're going to touch on too here in a little while. But like, I really think that's the one position on this team that is the biggest question mark going into the year. And I have a question for you, but I want to hear your final thoughts too here. Cause I want to pose the same question you did to me. Like, do you think Patrick Wisdom's going to be the kind of the incumbent at third base going into the season? And then I want to pitch you another question, but I want to hear from you first.
Yeah, I think it's his job to lose right now. I think the front office has shown faith in him and giving him the playing time. I haven't checked the metrics, but
his autograph session also required a voucher at CubsCon.
Oh,
that's
okay,
big time.
Yeah, so
so did Morel, but Madrigal did not. So again, just we're big time in it here.
Yeah, Madrigal was on like the C or D stage or something like that. Yeah,
might have been the B stage. It was one of the
he was definitely ones. He was definitely not an A. But yeah, it's Wisdom's spot to lose. But as I was saying, I haven't checked the defensive metrics, but I've heard that when we had Cole Wright on Monday, I think he mentioned it or someone recently mentioned it.
Also,
somewhere.
Just quickly, Cole Wright, elite human being. We got to talk to him a little bit at CubsCon. Oh, he's a bloody legend. I love that guy so much.
Yeah, he's fantastic. But somebody mentioned somewhere that Patrick Wisdom's glove went
down
last year. Like it was not as good as it was in 2021.
Sure.
And I don't know, like I still he's shown that he can pick it over there, right? So I have faith that he's going to be able to pick it back up. And obviously the dude's got a cannon. So yeah, I think especially with shifting, being eliminated, having a third baseman that can pick it over there is important. I think Morel can do it, but his arm is kind of erratic, so we don't really know. And like, are we going to have a first baseman over there who can pick those errant throws? So yeah, it's going to be Wisdom that gets majority of the playing time at the beginning of the season. I will also say too that I think that the Madrigal getting time at third base, like that announcement was very conveniently timed, right? It could be a thing where it's like, hey, teams that might be interested in Nick Madrigal's services, he's playing third base. We're having him take reps at third base a little bit.
Yeah,
a little nudge, right? And then at the same time as well, it's convenient to put it out there and have people like us talk about, like, oh, his value's going up. So will he end up playing that much third base? Probably not, but like, it's good to have that versatility and prove to the front office. I hope he can prove to the front office that he does.
Yeah.
I think Morel is going to spell people around the field. I don't think he gets a lot of solid playing time, like repetitive playing time at third base.
Sure.
So yeah, long-winded answer. Wisdom. It's Wisdom's job right now.
Okay.
For better or worse.
Sure. I respect that. So here's my question. This was something that I actually I brought up to you before we got on. My dad and I talked about this today. My dad and I talk a lot about baseball. One day I'm just going to set up a microphone when him and I have like a 10-minute conversation.
Yeah, dude.
But like we presented the idea, and really my dad was the one that brought it up. He said, because we were talking about third base, right? And we were, going around the diamond and, who's playing where. And he goes, if you're the Cubs, because we were talking about prospects, right? Because we got on the pitching topic. I said, I think Jordan Wicks is the guy we see this year, if any of the like top pitching prospects coming into the year. And it's probably late in the season if we do see him type thing, and he's got to blow through AA, in my opinion. Like there was more to it, obviously. But then he was like, well, would you ever trade that kind of guy? And I'm like, where are we getting here? He brought up the point of, if you're the Cubs who have this prospect capital, right, that is considered at least a top 10 farm system in the league. Some people might even have them as high as top 7, top 6. Do you deal from some of that depth and go out there and say, we're not going to compete with anybody in the free agent market. Instead, we're just going to go out and get Manny Machado at the deadline and sign him to an extension pretty much immediately? Like, and maybe not necessarily Machado, because I've seen the Chapman link to the Cubs is very relevant. He's a free agent after this coming season. Maybe he's that same kind of guy where he's going to cost you a hell of a lot less, but plays elite defensive third base, brings a lot of power, something the Cubs need. And maybe that frees up a little bit of money for them to be in the Seiya sweepstakes too, if that ends up happening next year. So my bold overall question here for you, my friend, is, do you see a world where the Cubs do trade for a third baseman at the deadline if they're in contention and can go get one of these maybe bigger names early and have that first opportunity to talk new contract with them? Whether it's a guy like Machado who could opt out after this year, who's not necessarily a guaranteed free agent, but a guy like Matt Chapman who is a guaranteed free agent after the season.
Yeah. Okay, if he is performing at the level that he's capable of performing, I would love to see the Cubs pull one over on the Rockies the way the Cardinals did and grab Chris Bryant back.
Oh,
it's not. That's stupid.
Ooh.
It's stupid.
I don't care. That's
just a dumb hot take.
That's a spicy meatball take that I was here for tonight, though, Jake.
But look, I am not one to linger on these on the 2016 Cubs, but it's hard. It's hard not to when you see the two biggest question marks offensively and defensively are first and third base.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if we extended either one of those guys, I'm not going to linger on this. It's been beaten to death, but like that's something that, as an aside, a Hoerner extension has to get done this offseason. I don't think a Happ extension is going to get done because he's the MLB PA rep and he wants to test free agency and set the market for the young guys. I hope the Cubs are able to re-sign him in free agency. I'm the biggest guy on Happ. But to answer your question, it depends on a lot, right? I think inevitably there's going to be a point where we do deal from the prospect depth.
Mhm.
I think it is unlikely to be this season because, as you mentioned, Machado has the opt out at the end of this season. So there's no guarantee that you retain him,
Mhm.
and Chapman's contract is up. I really like both of those guys as fits for different reasons
Sure.
for the Cubs. I think they're the same age. Machado might be a year older. Chapman had hip labrum surgery, I believe, 2 seasons ago or last off season. And it was very similar. Like this was talked about on national podcasts. It was very similar to what I was talking about with the Madrigal injury situation, where it felt like he was maybe a little tentative, like not physically comfortable and confident yet. And then maybe in like July, he really turned it on offensively, and his numbers kind of tapered off at the end of the season. But like the bat is there. It just has been like like he played in Oakland, dude. That's a terrible hitter's stadium. And
That it is.
and Rogers Center is not much better. It is better offensively, but like it's probably like a middle of the road offensive park. But the glove, man, if you get him at third base, you've got the best defensive infield in baseball. It doesn't really even matter who you play at first base. I just don't think that it's going to line up for the Cubs to make the move this season. And the biggest reason, it has nothing to do with extending either of the guys that you trade for. It's more so this is a pivotal season for a lot of these top prospects. Like you mentioned with Wicks, like I do think we could see Wicks in the show by the end of the season for sure. I think he's one of MLB Pipeline's top left-handed starters. Top 10. What do you remember? I didn't check that yet. Do you know what number he landed at?
I want to say he was 8.
Okay. I mean, that's still a big deal. When's the last time the Cubs have had a top 10 pitching prospect?
Let alone a
either lefty or yeah. So
it's been a while.
Yeah, and like Wicks has talked really confidently about what he's doing with the Cubs pitching infrastructure, and it sounds great, man. I'm really excited. So we will deal from the prospect depth at some point, but I think it's gonna. I have no idea who's going to be available in 2024 at the trade deadline, but
right.
To me, that seems more likely. What did you and your dad end up settling on?
Well, so I told him, I said, I don't think they deal either. I think if anything, and we focused more on Machado, and Machado's 30. He'll be 31 come middle of the season, July. Chapman's actually only 29, and he won't turn 30 until April 28th. So a full month into the season, he'll finally turn 30. I could honestly see them targeting Chapman in free agency next year.
Agreed.
Like, I think that's where it goes. Because to me, third base is the one spot in the pipeline where they don't have a ton of depth, right? Like you have Chase Strumpf, who can absolutely play the position and has shown that flair. You have a guy like James Triantos, who's probably further down the road, but still could probably profile as a third baseman. But you could get a guy like Matt Chapman maybe on like a 3-4 year deal where that probably serves out just right at third base for when like a Triantos or somebody like that could be potentially ready in the future. We know where their prospect depth is, right? Shortstops, outfielders, and pitching. Like that's where they're building up the middle. That's exactly how they're doing it. Finally doing it, in my opinion, the right way. You build up the middle and then everything else sorts itself out. And
because how many those shortstops might end up any of those shortstops could end up becoming third baseman, right?
100%.
So
100%. And they just signed a ton of shortstops in the international free agent market, literally just following CubsCon pretty much on Monday. So it really, to me, is, I think if that's going to happen, that's kind of where my thoughts were. But I love what you said about this Cubs team kind of taking that, like they're going to trade from that pool in 2024, because I think we're in alignment here. 2023 is very much a transition year. You're starting to get the pieces in place. It's kind of like a 2015 year. I don't know if they overachieve like they did in 2015, but it's a 2015 year where then 2024 is like that compete year, right? Like they're going for it. PCA is probably up by 2024. Guys like Wicks, maybe Hers are starting to trickle into either the bullpen or at least into the rotation. the pieces are coming together for a competitor, I think, in 24. And Jeremiah says here too, just quickly in the comments, he says Christian Hernandez will be involved in trade like Gleyber Torres, maybe. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I meant Shohei, not Seiya. If I said Seiya, that's on me. But like, man, I really agree with that. I think that's when we do see them finally deal, because this prospect pool for the Cubs is such an interesting one, Jake, if you really think about it, because of all the circumstances around minor league baseball and no season in 2020 and 2021. A lot of guys got hurt, and 2022, the influx of talent through those KB and Rizzo and all those trades, right? And the Baez trades. Like, the Cubs don't entirely know what they have as this farm system yet. Like, we know there's a lot of talent here, but we don't know who's who and what's what. Like, I would say at this point as Cubs fans, like, we only probably quote unquote know that like Wicks is probably going to be a dude. Hers is probably going to be up there too. Brennan Davis is a big question mark. Kevin Alcantara is a dude, but he's a while away. And then like PCA is probably like the only like really like guarantees at this point. Everybody and Mervis probably making an appearance at the MLB Double next year. Like, that's probably the only guarantees of this farm. Outside of that, it's a hell of a lot of question marks, but a lot of question marks with a lot of upside. So
yeah,
I agree. I think it's evaluate, trade from that depth when the time comes, because I'm really interested to see what they do. Because again, we talked about it, right? Like, that's really the only positions. Obviously, Hap could, I guess, move on in theory. Belly could move on in theory. Some of these, like, everybody at first base outside of Mervis can move on in theory, right? Like, there's a lot of outs outside of pretty much Swanson really on this team. It's going to be interesting to see kind of what chess pieces start to fall where and who plays what roles on the chessboard that is an MLB field come the season. So I'm glad you shared your thoughts there, because I think it's really interesting. Again, just the third base market, I think in general. I mean, hell, we just spent 37 minutes talking about third base, from Madrigal to Morel to do they trade a guy? Like, that really is the biggest question mark on this team. Jake, do you have any more final thoughts kind of on 3B before we start to venture some of our other topics?
Yeah, two things, because I'm trying to figure out. So this is a quick wrap on Matt Chapman really quick.
Sure.
So looking at his Baseball Savant page, double-digit barrel rates every season but 2018. Like, as high as 13. We're not going to count 2020 because I think that's when he got injured. But 13.7% in 2021 and 12.9% last year. That is very, very good. And then like top 3%, top 5%, top 5% of hard hit percentage. Like, I mean, this dude hits the crap out of the ball. He gets on base a good amount. His K rate came down last year. Like, yeah, count me in on Chapman. I think that's a great prediction round. I would be shocked if the Cubs were not like fully in on a Matt Chapman type next season. And then I want to highlight Jeremiah's Christian Hernandez trade comment, because he said Christian Hernandez will be involved in a trade like the Gleyber Torres one, which could totally happen. But that's why I think it's important to just touch on again, this season is pivotal for prospect development. Like, it just feels like a lot of these guys have been in the system for this, even though the age range varies a bunch. Like, there are so many guys who have been like on the radar since like 2019. Obviously 2020 was the down season, but then 2021, like pitchers included, like I won't name names, but like there are all these guys who are kind of on this like same timetable of like, what do we have from here? Like, who, like Hernandez, I think it's his first taste of stateside ball this year. I think he was in the Dominican Summer League last year, if I remember correctly. So he comes stateside. Maybe he came stateside last summer. I should know that, but it's going to be really telling what he does. Like, he should be in low A. He should be in Myrtle Beach to start next season, I think. And how he adapts to that is going to say a lot. And I will say to Jeremiah, like, I hope that we don't trade Hernandez. I hope we give him at least through 2024 to see how he develops, because he's only like 18. He maybe turns 19 this summer. So and it's not fair to call him like A-Rod Jr. or whatever they were calling him, but like the dude clearly has upside, was a top international prospect. So yeah, I cannot wait to watch the Cubs minor leagues this season, man. I am so jacked.
There is going to be so much to it. And just to add a couple of numbers and items behind your Hernandez argument here. Again, drawing comparisons to baby A-Rod and baby Manny Machado is Hernandez. So again, shows the kind of upside and the talent. He just turned 19 on December 13th. God, he's a 2003 baby. I feel old. But again, a big dude, 6'2", 175 right now. He's going to fill out into that frame. He did spend the 2021 season in the Dominican Summer League. He spent 2022 in the Arizona League.
Yeah.
So he is stateside, but this will be his first, to your point, like in the actual like true minor league ranks probably this season, probably at Myrtle Beach. Like you said, he's going to be that everyday shortstop. He's kind of the superstar that's going to be at Myrtle Beach this year, like last year was with PCA and Alcantara, because now we're going to see Alcantara at South Bend, and then we're probably going to see PCA in Tennessee. So I really think that's going to be fun. And quickly here, Juice said, come out to South Bend, Jake. We can watch these guys and do a Dinger's Cot trip around the bend. Yeah, I'm going to be going out to Juice quite a bit.
That'd be sick.
So
That'd be sick.
We'll definitely keep you in the loop on that as well, because I am also a prospect nerd. I love looking at prospects. I keep up more with the Cubs than anybody else, obviously, but I keep my eyes around baseball, and prospects always intrigue me. That's why we talked about a fantasy or dynasty style fantasy baseball league here. We're a lot on the same wavelength there, man. But no, again, all great points. I think it's really going to be interesting. And again, I think this whole just how things shake out for the Cubs in general this year is going to be so interesting. And kind of along those lines here, Jake, right? We've talked a little bit, and I told you, right, I had this itch, just this desire to talk Cubs baseball. I was watching CubsCon. I was listening to like the pitchers panel from CubsCon because I missed that one, unfortunately. And hearing guys like Tucker Barnhart talk on the Compound Pod with Jameson Taillon and different things like that, like my whole brain went to like pitching and just pitching, catching with this team. Like I told you beforehand, like I think Tucker Barnhart and Yan Gomes, although maybe not the sexiest names on paper, are like the perfect catchers to have for this Cubs team and how they're building this team. But I would love to get your thoughts and opinions just on, we talked about this as like the depth of Cubs pitching this season. And you and I think thinking it's quality depth, contrary to some outside beliefs and noise. And let's dive into that here a little bit, because I think they have quality depth this season. And I am like just doing, somersaults in my own brain about who's going to be where and how many guys are going to get MLB pitching time, because in my opinion, they have like 9 guys that could be, top 5 rotation arms this season, So I'd love to get your thoughts there, man. Let's just keep rolling down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. So going back to the we talked about this in the pre, going back to the MLB or the Athletic MLB podcast. Yeah. They talked about the Cubs pitching depth, and I can't remember where they saw it because I'm not seeing it on Roster Resource, or I don't know how to expand, but like they said that there were like 12 starting pitchers listed on the Cubs 40-man right now, or even on the 26-man roster. And yeah, that kind of feels about right, And like you said, there are so many of these guys that could slot into the rotation. But what they said, and I do think is accurate, there's not an ace. Like there's not a guy, if you got a 1-game playoff, which obviously doesn't exist anymore because the wild card is 3 games. But like if you have an elimination game, you don't have a guy where it's like, that's the guy. We don't have that right now.
Right.
And I don't think we expected to get, like, no one expected us to go out and get Rodon this offseason, right? So the other thing that kind of like, so this was Keith Law really talking about it. And he said, so he's not as high on Justin Steele as other people are. Yeah, I agree, man. So he said that he thinks Steele is a good depth piece, like back end of the rotation. Which, yeah, maybe if we had a true stud ace,
a Shane Bieber,
yeah, and Kyle Hendricks was pitching like a 3, then yeah, maybe it would line up like Bieber, Stroman, Hendricks, Tyone, Steele. That's a fucking killer rotation, by the way. Like, that would be so sick.
Ugh.
That'd be sick. I mean, a healthy Hendricks that, like a classic vintage Hendricks, like that'd be a phenomenal rotation. But we don't have that. And there are a lot of question marks, which with the Cubs pitching infrastructure, I think is actually kind of exciting. Because and I'm not even like, Drew Smiley is listed as the 4, Keegan Thompson is listed as the 5. This is all according to Fangraphs roster resource. They have Stroman as the ace, which, but they don't even have Hendricks slotted in right now because they have him on, as being injured.
Right.
So here are my thoughts. I think that Keegan Thompson ends up a bulldog in the pen.
Agreed.
I don't know if he ends up being the closer. I don't have his stuff numbers right now in front of me. But I don't think even in a limited bullpen role, Jeremiah is booing me in the comments. I love Keegan Thompson. And if he becomes a high leverage reliever, that's a win. Like, that's a big win for the Cubs, right? I don't think that he has the stuff to last in the rotation long term. I think he could be a swing man. I would honestly, at this point, rather see Wisniewski get more starts, because I think we kind of know. We got to see a lot of Thompson last season.
Mm-hmm.
We got flashes of brilliance from Wisniewski last season. But what I want to see from him is if he can pitch deeper into ball games over the course of a season without the league adjusting to him. That's the important thing. Can the league adjust to his Frisbee slider and say, no, I'm going to spit on that? Like figure out the counts he's going to throw it and just say, nope, I'm sitting fastball. Oh, that boo wasn't for me, Jeremiah said. It was to the dude who said he's not high on Steele. Yeah, Keith Law, I mean, a lot of people say, like, oh, if someone's a former GM, there's a reason they're a former GM. Sure. But these guys are still plugged in, talking to front offices, talking to scouts. Like, they know baseball. The dude was a GM for a reason, right? He's got knowledge that we do not possess.
Agreed.
But I think Steele could, I mean, he could end up being the 2 if he. But it's a fine line that he has to tread, right? Like, he's got to have the fastball that plays up in the zone, and he's got to work off of that. And if the fastball is not working on any given day, what happens? We didn't really see that last season. So, yeah, I mean, I think they've done a pretty good job building out the bullpen so far. I like the Merriweather addition. I tweeted about it earlier today too. That Merriweather was rumored to be in the running for the Blue Jays closer role before last season. And then Jordan Romano just took it and ran with it. But Merriweather, like, he's got good stuff. Like, if you're familiar with the Stuff Plus numbers, his Stuff Plus number was like, I think like a 121 or something, which is really high. Stuff Plus model is an Eno Saris statistic, and it basically determines, like, it sets a standard. It's basically like, ERA plus or WRC plus.
I was going to say it's like a WRC plus, but for their stuff.
Exactly. And then there's location plus, and then the combination of the two is pitching plus. And it's really, really fascinating. Like, but the cool thing, Jeremiah Estrada had like a 136 Stuff Plus or something like that in his limited. Yeah. So they were saying, this was Eno Saris and Derek Van Riper on Rates and Barrels, another athletic. It's really fantasy focused, but like really good information, especially if you want to nerd out about stats. And they were saying that Jeremiah Estrada is really interesting. And we all know that as Cubs fans. Like, we saw it last year and we're like, damn, this might be the dude. And like, dude, that's not even talking about what role Alzolay is going to play this year. So it just is like, I heard somewhere that Alzolay kind of likes the idea of coming out of the bullpen. So, hey, man, if we can get that to play up, like, if he takes that role and can be a good swingman or long reliever and come out and just shut the opposing lineup down, I'm here for it. So I don't know, man. I like talking pitching. We're already at 50 minutes. There's a lot that we could talk about with pitching. What are you highlighting right now?
I'm just excited for, again, I think the depth in the rotation is one of the things, right? Because I personally think about it this season coming in. It's a Keith Law really quick. Justin Steele had a 3.18 ERA last season. So with a really bad defensive team behind him and, just kind of, treading it through the season. I mean, started the most games for the Cubs. He had 24 starts last year, 119 innings of work, 126
Workhorse.
Ks. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was a workhorse for this Cubs team last year. That to me is the guy. And we saw him start to settle into that, I think, later in the season, right? We saw those, we'd get the weird like 7 inning and only like 3 or 4 K games, which I thought were interesting, but he gave you the length. But like when he was going 6 and he was striking out like 10, that was hot. Those were the games where I'm like, he's a dude. He's a dude. Yeah. And I got to sit like right up front for one of his games against the Brewers in late August. I scored a single ticket. By the way, I went to a baseball game by myself last year. It's the greatest experience ever.
I'm sure.
I put it on the bucket list for baseball fans. Like, you have to do it once. Just go to a game by yourself. Sit with people you don't know. Because like we know a lot of the bleacher bums, like my Thai guy, friend of the program, right? Like Bleacher Jeff's obviously out there, cool dude. We know a lot of those guys. Got to meet guys like Ryan Cox, etc. I went and sat around no one I knew. I just like the dudes next to me probably thought I was crazy because I kept like just generating small talk with them. But oh my god, it was amazing. Anyway, Steele dominated 6 innings, like 10 or 11 Ks, just dominated. Like that's what I'm expecting out of him. But like I go into the season with him, Stroman. If Hendricks looks anything like the Hendricks of old, he's going to get a chance at the rotation.
Yeah.
Smiley and Taillon. Like that's probably your 5 coming out of spring training, assuming all goes the way I think a lot of people expect it to. But I think Wesneski's going to be pushing for starts. I hope he gets a lot of time because I love Hayden Wesneski so much.
Yeah.
I love the weird, his
ticks on the mound.
His ticks on the mound. I love that shit.
So you watched the pitching roundtable. One of the things that he talked about, so this woman was so funny. She came up with, she was talking about the immaculate inning, and they gave her like a little bit of extra time, and she was like, your attitude out there, like your excitement, like she was just like this little fiery like 60-year-old woman. Yeah. I loved it, and Hayden was like, you could tell that he's like kind of an introvert, right? Yeah. Like you can tell that he's kind of hunched down and very soft spoken, but obviously that's not his attitude on the mound. Mm-hmm. And he was like, yeah, I forget that the cameras are on me when I'm out there. And it's like, dude, relish it. Like be that guy, because like Cubs fans want to see that energy. We thrive. I mean, any fan base does, but like,
that's why everybody
Cubs fans.
That's why everybody loves Stroh and Steele. Because like I love when Steele comes firing off the mound and he's fired up after an inning, like he gets out of a jam or something. He's let's go, he's like banging his mitt and shit. Like Stroh gets excited and he's coming off like clapping and shit. Like
conversely though, one of my favorite Cubs of all time was one that never showed emotion. Cubs pitchers, Ted Lilly. Ted Lilly had the same face.
Yeah,
he had the same face.
He's Kyle Hendricks. He's Kyle Hendricks before Kyle Hendricks. Like, no emotion, just go to work, be consistent, take care of business kind of guy. I'm right there with you.
With the smoothest windup too. I loved that dude's windup. I would stand in front of the TV and try to replicate it. He had like one of the over the top, and then he'd come to his peak, and it would just like he would come locked at his peak, just like perfectly. I could never get it. But that's beside the point. I mean, yeah, dude. I agree with you. I hope Wesneski gets run. I mean, What do you think? Where does Alzolay end up? What do you think his role ends up being? Do you think he gets any extended run in the rotation?
I don't think he does. And especially if he's already kind of keying up. He and Keegan to me are in the same breath. I think the Cubs might try to revolutionize baseball a little bit here. I think the Cubs are going to dip in. Here's my little hot take for the show. I think the Cubs are going to dip in a ever so slightly to the Tampa Bay Rays model. And here's what I mean by that. I don't think they're going to go full-blown bullpen days. I don't think that's going to exist. They have the rotation depth. They don't need to go a bullpen day every fifth day. However, I think you are going to see the Cubs, though, possess more relievers that can go more than one inning. I think the world of one-inning relievers is, unless they're nasty, is coming to an end. Like, I think you're going to see guys that can at least go two. Brandon Hughes did it a lot. Keegan did it almost every single outing he had. Like, I think at minimum, a lot of these guys, because of the new rules, right, where guys can't just face one batter and get pulled. You have to face three. Right. I think you're going to see the world of guys facing 4 to 6 batters regularly. Like, I think that's going to be the new standard for a bullpen arm. And having two weapons of guys that have starting pedigree, like a Alzolay and a Keegan Thompson, going 3 innings every other couple days when you need them to, and can like kind of take, like, hypothetically speaking, right? You just went 12 innings the night before, and your bullpen's a little burnt, but you didn't get to a Keegan or an Alzolay. Okay, awesome. Drew Smiley just gave you 6 quality innings. Adbert, it's yours. Last 3 innings, go shut it down. Like that, It's you. We're not using anybody else if we don't have to. I really think you're going to see that factoring in. I think Jeremiah Estrada takes your closing role ultimately.
I was just going to ask who gets the bulk of the save opportunities.
He's nasty. I think early in the season it'll be by committee. I think they'll give Brandon Hughes chances. I think they're going to give Cody Hoyer chances when he's back and kind of healthy. Fully healthy once he's worked back up after TJ. And then I think Estrada's going to get chances. I think just because of stuff, Estrada wins it. Like Hughes, to me, if all goes well, Hughes is your 8th inning guy, right? Like he's your setup guy. He come in, he's nasty. He could close games for you if you need him to, but like he's setting up the guy that's coming out throwing 103 from the right side. Like that's what he's going to do. And then you have a plethora of guys that can take the ball in that 7th inning. Merriweather, like you mentioned, is another name. If the Cubs add another lefty, like the rumors report of a Matt Moore or an Andrew Chafin,
we didn't even talk about that.
Yeah. Those guys could be 7th, 8th type guys too. This Cubs bullpen, to me, like the Cubs are going to do a lot of things different in baseball, I think, this coming season, right? Like they're not going to be the biggest power team, but they're going to run a lot. They're going to play elite defense. They're going to pitch really well. And even without a defined ace, I think they're still going to pitch really well by committee. I think they're going to do a bunch of weird shit with their bullpen. I really do. Like, I think they're going to have guys that can go 3 innings, have guys that can go 2 innings, have guys that can go 1 inning, have guys with elite stuff, have guys with weird stuff, have guys with, they're just going to be all over the place. And I think, like you said, and Jeremiah brought up a comment earlier, and I'm going to find it here and put it up on the screen as well, because I thought it was absolutely perfect. He says, I would take question marks with upside rather than knowing what every player is. A, because of the excitement level. I think that's fun as a fan, especially in a transition year. But in the terms of this bullpen, like, that's good for the Cubs because nobody has a scouting report on what they're going to do because they have so many guys that can do so many different things. Like, we talk about Christopher Morel, perfect example, right? Players with positional versatility on the field. I almost think you can have positional versatility, quote unquote, within your bullpen with how guys are used in their roles. Yes. Can they be multi-inning guys? Can they attack 4 and 5 batters regularly? Or are they just games on the line, we're up 1 run and I need you to come below 103 by somebody? Like, they're going to have guys that can do a little bit of everything. And I think that's what's going to be fascinating about this bullpen. And again, guys like Tucker Barnhart, who's a veteran student of the game behind the plate, as is Yan Gomes. Like, I had 2 major takeaways from Cubs Con. One was like something of holy crap, like we knew it, but we didn't totally realize it. And then like a guy I fell for a little more. Like I'm a Belly Bombs guy. I bought a Belly Bombs jersey.
Oh my God. Was
the biggest impulse purchase of my entire life, but I'm not mad about it.
No.
Belly Bombs jersey, I'm ready. I love Cody Bellinger.
At the very least, it'll be the next, like I was saying to my buddy Mike, it's going to be the next Garcia Parra style Cubs.
Yes, 1,000%. And I love that. Yeah. It's not going to be as good as a Rafael Ortega jersey, but it's going to be up there.
I forgot you have a Rafi jersey.
I do. I have a Rafi jersey. And like, he's going to be that guy. But like, I think the respect that pitchers, not just Cubs pitchers have for Yan Gomes. There's a reason the Cubs were okay letting Wilson Contreras walk because Yan Gomes might single-handedly be one of the most respected catchers I've ever seen in my existence as a baseball
Look
fan.
at the splits, right? Look, I mean, I don't have them offhand, but I know
I think the only
you
starter
broke it down. Did you tweet the breakdown? Yeah.
I don't know, but I know the only pitcher that I think did better statistically with Contreras behind the plate, and it wasn't by much. It was a very small margin. It was by point maybe 3 ERA points.
Yeah.
The only one that did better with Contreras behind the plate was Stroman.
Yes.
Outside of that, every single guy, at least a whole earned run difference in ERA between Yan and Contreras, with Yan being the significant difference. And again, you heard guys over the weekend talking about it, in the pitchers panel. I want to say it was Keegan, was just like, yeah, man, I like being that bulldog. I come out, I trust what Jan's throwing down. And I'm like, he went out of his way to mention Yan Gomes. That's huge. They're going to have so much fun. This team could just pitch their way. I want boring Cubs baseball. Give me 2-1 victories every single night because they play elite defense and they pitch lights out. Because every game's going to be 2.5 hours.
Give me quick games.
Every game's going to be 2.5 hours. I'm going to be asleep by 10 p.m. every night. It's going to be fantastic. I like fast-paced baseball. Dude, it's going to be this team. Again, I know I'm ranting and I'm going to get off the horse here in a second. But this Cubs bullpen is going to be fascinating. The rotation's going to be fascinating. We haven't even talked about guys like Javier Assad, who was very respectable, really just coming out of nowhere for the Cubs, and they have so much depth.
Cam Sanders. We haven't talked about Cam. I thought that dude was for sure going to get swiped in the Rule 5.
I can't believe he didn't get swiped in the Rule 5.
The Cubs are so lucky that he is still in the system.
He's
going to end up being a reliever, but
yeah. Those three got
horseshoes, but just right. But like you said, he feeds in exactly to this new hybrid type reliever that you're talking about that can go multiple innings. So yeah, man, we may see that. I like the Boxberger signing. I don't even think we've mentioned Boxberger. I like that signing a lot.
Give me him in the 7th inning every single day,
dude. And the fact that he comes into this, we get him from the Brewers. He talks to for sure, he's going to talk to Hottovy about what the Brewers were doing and how they're maximizing their bullpen talent. That's how this shit happens, right? Ideas get swapped and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I Boxberger and Merriweather are the two guys right now. I don't expect us. I hope we're not in a position to flip it that we need to be flipping people at the deadline, but bullpen arms makes sense because of the depth that we've seen over the past few years, that the Cubs are able to continue replenishing the bullpen with guys. And we know, we haven't talked about Ben Leeper. You mentioned Javier Assad, Cam Sanders. I'm missing a big name. There's one other minor league. He won't play again this year, but who's the guy that came up last year that had to get time? He was a late round draft pick. Oh my God, what's his name? Ethan Roberts. Yeah, he had Tommy John. Yeah. So obviously he won't play this season, but yeah, man, there's bullpen depth and like you said, I mean, they haven't even signed that veteran lefty, and there is Luke Little. Jeremiah mentions Luke Little. That's a great yes for sure. But that's the thing, man. There are guys next offseason, if everything breaks correctly, they're not signing any bullpen arms, which is saying a lot. It saves a lot of money.
I was gonna say, and that's a weapon.
Controllable guys. Yeah.
When you have a bullpen that is cheap and cost effective but elite, you are on a different level as an organization because you don't have to spend in an area that is crippling to some teams around the league.
Yep. And we won't have to see the flip pieces anymore. I don't think either of those guys gets flipped. I think a lot would have to go well for Merriweather. I don't think Boxberger is going to put up, good enough numbers. If you see either of those guys flipped, it's because the front office has confidence that they can backfill. They know there's a guy waiting in the wings that's ready to come up and fill that position.
Same thing we saw last year. Yeah. We saw it last year as they dealt all those guys at the deadline, as they dealt Robertson, as they dealt Givens, the guys they leaned on early in the year, they were able to backfill. Brandon Hughes, backfill with guys like Jeremiah Estrada, et cetera. Like they were able to backfill it.
Manny Rodriguez.
Yeah.
I forgot about Manny Rodriguez.
That's a good problem. When you start forgetting about dudes, that's when there's a lot of dudes. If you just can't name them all off the top of your head. Yeah, man. I'm so excited. Like the pitching catching conversation just from CubsCon just got me so excited about how this team's going to pitch this year. And because you saw a lot of it last year once the rotation was healthy, but this year they're ready for it, right? They actually have that depth now where, God forbid, a Kyle, a Stroman, a Tyone, a Smiley, somebody like that misses some time early in the season.
It's inevitable, right?
They got so many
pitching,
dudes,
man.
Yeah, they got so many dudes that can just step in and get the job done. Like right out the gate, no big deal, so on and so forth. But Jake, as we continue to wind for this show, I have one more thing I want to just quickly vent. But I want to turn over to you first. Like, is there another something that we didn't touch on already this evening that you want to bring up here before we kind of start to wind things down here?
I'll try to make it quick. Jeremiah posted the comment about John Boy talking baseball. I'm going to blame it. So I think their Wednesday episode this week, or maybe Monday, they talked about the Mancini signing, and John Boy and Jake were kind of like, so Jeremiah's comment, also rare L take what Talking Baseball said about the Cubs offseason. Yeah, dude, it rubbed me the wrong way and just kind of struck me as like, Jimmy just had like they've got a baby, right? So like he's maybe got dad brain right now, like which I don't know what that's like. Someday I might, but like, lack of sleep. Those guys have a lot to keep up with, right? Mm-hmm. But Jimmy's whole thing was like, I don't see what value this adds. Like with the Mancini signing, he's like, what are the Cubs doing? Like how do their fans must be like clueless right now? It's like, no. The fans feel good. And I love Trevor Plouffe. And he might be coming on Dingers at the end of the month here. He tweeted at me. He said, remind me at the end of the month. I'll come on the pod because he is a self-proclaimed Cubs fan now. So we got to get him on.
Insert big eyeball emojis.
Yeah, right. So Plouffe was shaking his head the whole time and kind of fought back. He's like, no, man, the fans want to see the owners spend money. And that's what they did. Like this team is better on paper this year than they were last year. And I will really quickly to DVR and Keith Law, like to their credit, they did say that they expected the Cubs to be a wild card team going into the 2022 season. And they did say that this 2023 team is better. So like they didn't want to make a prediction that they'd be a wild card team because obviously the East and the West are so stacked. So it's more likely that the Cubs make the playoffs by winning the division than trying to vie for a wild card position. But yeah, Plouffe stood up and was like, no. They spent money. The fans have to be happy about that. They've got a product on the field now that like should win ball games or at least should be competitive. So I just wanted to touch on that because Jeremiah mentioned it and I had a buddy text me about it saying like, hey man, were you listening to Talking Baseball? Like this rubbed me the wrong way. So I'm glad Plouffe stood up for it. I hope he comes on the podcast at the end of the month here and we can talk some more about Cubs baseball with a national guy.
Absolutely. And just to quickly add to your point there too, Jake, I agree. These moves all add some kind of value. Sure, it might not be quote unquote needle moving value for everybody, especially on a national scale, but at least from a market scale, like Cubs fans respect the fact that they're adding depth at certain positions.
They're trying, right?
Yeah.
Like they're trying.
They're giving Ross and company more to work with than they did last season and even the year before after they sold everybody off. So that in itself, I think, is something that we can absolutely get behind and be excited about, like you said, as Cubs fans. So I completely agree with you there. But kind of along the same lines, actually, was my last point. So this, I feel like, is a very natural transition. But I was telling you about a video I came across on TikTok, and I can't remember the creator right now. I'm not stealing any ideas and just regurgitating the information. But he did a franchise mode with the Cleveland Guardians and built his roster around speed, pitching, and defense. And that's it. Not really any power hitters. And like he literally, but his like the shtick of the video was he bunted every single at bat, all bunts. And he the Guardians beat the White Sox 6-2 because Bieber only let up 2 solo shots and they bunted their way to 18 hits and 6 runs and stealing bags and moving runners. And like, not that the Cubs are going to bunt for 18 hits. That's not my like where this my brain ran wild. But Jake, my brain went wild because that's what the Cubs are going to be though this year. They're gonna run on the bases. The bases are bigger this year. They've added speed. They're gonna run. Swanson's going to steal a couple bags. Nico, I think, could be a 30 stolen base guy. He was a 20 SB guy last year. Maybe he's a 30 steal guy this year. Maybe Nicky Mads is stealing bags if he's getting in regularly. Morel's got speed. You know, maybe you see a guy like Hosmer swipe a bag now and again. You know, he's not the fastest guy in the world, but every now and again. Rizzo stole bags. Why can't Hosmer, right?
Right.
But like Sea's a runner. Belly's a runner. Belly's going to run. Hap is a runner, and I think we'll see more Hap running this season because of the bigger bases. Like, this is a team that's going to put the ball in play, move guys around. They're going to run a lot. They were one of the top running teams last season. I think they're going to continue that streak this season. They're going to play great defense, and they're going to pitch really well. And sure, the power component they're working on, right? Like, you get a guy like Mancini who had 18 bombs last year. Swanson, probably the most significant power guy in terms of recent numbers that they added this season. I would say totally it's Bellinger because obviously if you hit 47 bombs in a year, like Ian Happ and Mark Grace and Bellinger talked about it on the compound at CubsCon. One Cubs hitter in franchise history as a lefty has hit 40 homers playing at Wrigley, and it was Billy Williams, and he did it once, and that's it. And Belly's career high is like 47 or whatever in his MVP season. So again, they added power, but these are all guys that are athletes. These are all guys that play good defense. And these are all guys that are going to make this team interesting to watch. Like, they're going to be fun regardless. A lot needs to go right? Like, you need rebounds from guys like Bellinger. You need a Seiya Suzuki next step forward. You need a Hap consistent, building on what he did in 2022. You continue down that track. You need Swanson to continue to do what he's doing, right? Obviously, every team in the league, you can make that argument for. A lot of things need to go right. But this team is built to pitch well, play good defense, and they're going to be athletes. And baseball is becoming a more athletic sport again. The shift is gone, right? The guys defensively are going to have to show that athleticism. The bases are bigger. They want running. They want guys stealing bags. Stolen bags are cool stuff. I miss the days when Carl Crawford would swipe like 54 bags in a season. That shit was awesome.
Damn right.
Those Rays teams in the late 2000s with BJ Upton and Reed Brignac and Ben Zobrist and Carl Crawford and like Matt Joyce and Carlos Pena, like they used to hit bombs, steal bags, and play good defense, and it won them games. And they pitched well. Scotty Kazmir, David Price, James Shields, Matt Garza. I was at Matt Garza's no-hitter in Tampa, actually. Fun little fact. I was at that game. And Carl Crawford's one of my all-time favorite players. A very fun fact about me. But like, dude, I'm telling you, like, this team, a lot needs to go right for them to win the NL Central, make the playoffs, things like that. But fuck, they're going to be fun, dude. Like, this is going to be a fun team because they're built to be athletic, play good defense, and pitch well. And I think that's going to make Cubs baseball, honestly, I had fun in 2022. They weren't very good.
I did too.
They were still a fun team. This year's team, even more fun. So again, not really like. Yeah, go ahead.
No, hang on. I'll let you finish your thought really quick, but then I have one question to wrap things.
I was just gonna say, mine wasn't even like a question or a topic of debate or anything, but just like, again, watched this video and it just. My brain, like, you know how in like the movies, right, where there's like that big dramatic scene at the end, like, this machine hasn't worked for 25 years and they plug it in and you hear those gears crank for the first time and it's like shoom, 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 and then it like picks up speed and it's this big inspirational moment. That was my brain last night watching this TikTok video because I was just like, the Cubs are going to run and be athletic and play good defense and pitch well. And oh my God, it's going to be great. Like that was my brain yesterday. So I just had to share that. That's what started the itch really to talk Cubs baseball tonight.
I mean,
but that's where my head's at, man.
And it makes sense too. Like, think about Carter Hawkins coming from the Guardians, the team that the Guardians are putting together right now. Like the Guardians aren't that team, the bunting for hits team in real life, but like they very much are, a slap the ball around the yard team right now. And
play great defense.
Right. And the Cubs aren't going to be exactly that because I think the Cubs have, like, if all breaks right, a little bit more power in the lineup, but pitching and defense. Now, with all of that said, obviously we've got, about a month till pitchers. Well, spring training starts in about a month, I think, right? It's usually like the last week of February.
I would say it's even like February 20th, right? As early as that sometimes. Where
I got the Cubs convention calendar right here. Let's see when the first game is. We got first spring training game is the 25th of February. So we got a little over a month.
Boom.
So we'll talk. I mean, this is a little preemptive, but if you had to choose one player that you are most excited to watch progress, do their thing this year, who is your one player?
Belly Bombs, baby. I am so hell-bent. I became such just a fan of the dude at CubsCon, hearing him talk so much and things like that of Bellinger, that, like, if Bellinger were to, like, again, I'm not expecting him to go back to hitting 47 homers and driving at 119 runs again and hitting almost 300. I'm not expecting that. But if this dude could come out and play Gold Glove center field defense, play great first base defense where you can move him around a little bit, the power comes back, right? 19, I think, homers last year. Let's say that number is somewhere between 25 and 30.
Yeah.
And he's hitting somewhere between 250 and 260. I make the argument that if you're not entirely sure what you have in corner outfielders, if you don't bring back Happ, or, Mervis is maybe not the greatest defensive first baseman, so he's more of your DH every day kind of guy, but he's got the big bat and the power stroke. I wouldn't be mad about the Cubs investing a couple years in Bellinger. He's only 27 years old. Like, that's the guy I'm excited. Like, I want to see him revitalize his career and the Cubs be competitive, because if he's revitalizing and the Cubs aren't competitive, he's gone, and I'm going to be sad. But if they are competitive and he is revitalized, to me, that immediately makes me start to at least think about the equation after the deadline, if he's still here, of, does this guy play with this team beyond this season? And I think there's a real possibility of yes. So Belly Bombs is my guy that, like, the first Bellinger home run, I hope it's opening day too, just for shits and giggles.
Damn.
Like,
I
would go nuts. Like, I want to see
people going.
Yeah, like, I want him to take Ian Happ's advice. They were talking about it. He's like, that left center, is where you really want to go oppo. He goes, yeah, left center. As a left-handed hitter, if you can put it left center, you're going to hit a lot of home runs. Like, I hope Bellinger pokes one out into the basket on opening day, and just that place is going to go absolute.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
So Belly Bombs, baby. That's my answer.
Seiya.
No, yeah, dude.
I just think Seiya's going to have a huge season. Like, I don't even need to get into specifics. I think that the dude started to figure shit out at the end of last season. I think if he didn't have the injuries, I don't know, like Michael Harris, I think he won Rookie of the Year. I don't think it was right? I think it was just Michael Harris. It wasn't him and Strider. I don't know if Seiya would have won Rookie of the Year, but he would have been damn close if he didn't miss all that time with the ligament sprain. The dude's ready. The dude's ready to play, and he's had time to assimilate, understand the city, get to know the culture better, get into the team, get to know the clubhouse. Ian Happ's his best friend. They're manning the outfield, the corners together every day. Man, I am jacked. I can't wait, and I think we're going to see a lot. I think we're going to see him have fun. Like, it's clear to me that he's got a personality the way that Darvish does. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure Darvish, it took him, a year or two to let himself, out there. But dude, I am so remember how stoked we were when the Cubs landed Seiya last offseason? Like, no one saw that coming. No one saw that coming. The dude's going to have a big season. If he stays healthy, big season from Seiya. 280, I'll call it right now. 280, 345, 350 on base, and like low to mid 20s home runs.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Honestly, just adding really quick to it, I think because he wasn't at CubsCon, like Seiya's like kind of the forgotten guy on this team. That agreed. Right. I think he's ready to break out. I've been thinking that as well. So same wavelength, my friend. I think that's a great pick for this coming season. Seiya's going to be absolutely wild. And it's going to be fun, man. This was an awesome show, dude. We need to do this more often.
Dude, I could talk for another hour. Like,
oh, I know. We could absolutely
we've
talk.
Talked about like everything, but I still feel like you said, like the itch to talk baseball, man. I had it too, so I'm glad we were able to do this.
Absolutely, it was very unexpected, last minute. I got the itch at like 1:00 this afternoon and started sending messages. And as soon as I sent it, Jake was, "I'm in," and I was like,
literally within a minute, I responded. Yeah.
It was,
I was like,
terrifyingly fast. I was like, "Holy shit!" I didn't expect that quick of a response.
I was ready, man. I got
awesome.
Slack on my phone. I'm ready to go.
Hey, I love it. I absolutely love it. We'll have to do this again, man. There's just so much still to talk about with this Cubs team, and again, a lot of things to be excited for. Just really quick on the Seiya note, Jeremiah has him going for 50.
Let's get it.
I will. I'm gonna regret that. I hope I regret this. No, you know what? I hope I regret this. If Seiya Suzuki hits 50 home runs this year, I will do some outlandish shit. I don't know what it is yet, but we'll do some outlandish shit. It'll probably involve Malort. It might involve like running wind sprints in a field. Like we could make it some off the wall stuff here. Maybe it's in the Mancini too, since I'm now going to have to purchase that with the Mancini signing. Like we'll do some outlandish shit if Seiya hits 50 bombs, and I'll be a good sport about it. I'll live up to it. That's just my 2 cents there, man. But hey, before we truly wrap this thing down, quick and final thoughts here as we get out of here.
Man, I had a great time hanging with you guys at CubsCon.
Absolutely.
And excited to see some games together at Wrigley this season.
100%. That will definitely happen. And we've already been talking internally for those listening at home about a Des Moines trip to get all the Dingers boys, since 3/4 of you guys out there in the great state of Iowa. Some South Bend trips. I would love to get down to Knoxville if at all possible and see a AA game, especially if PCA and some of these other guys are going to be down. Like Tennessee's going to be loaded this year. They're going to be fun to watch. I'm right there with you, man. Like my final thought is I'm ready for Cubs baseball. Like I am, the itch is so bad right now. I am just perfectly ready. Like I have a ton of friends that live near the ballpark. Joey and I are up to something when it comes to tickets. Like I'm ready. Like opening day is a holiday. And last year, like we did this whole big weekend out of it. We're doing it again. And again, I'm going to campaign to get as many of you Dinger boys there too. Like, let's get everybody there and have a just great day on March 30th. When hopefully the Cubs down the Brewers again, like they did last year on opening day. But yeah, man, I'm just ready for Cubs baseball. That's really the long story short of it is just I'm ready. I'm ready for some Cubs baseball. But Jake, as always, I want to remind everybody, Dingers Pod and Cubs on Tap are the official Cubs podcasts of the On Tap Sports Network for Cubs baseball. You can check all of us out over at www.ontapsportsnet.com and at OnTapSportsNet on social media. You guys are at Dinger Cubs on Twitter. We are at Cubbies on Tap on Twitter. We're also on Instagram. I believe you guys are as well. You are at baseball_bouge. I am at Loose on Tap. Follow all of our other great panelists on both shows, Mitch and the boys as well. In addition, Juice, Joey, Tyler. You know the gangs. Be sure to be following along with everybody. And again, on Tap, we do it all. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, you know the drill. I actually just did 4 Feathers with Johnny Nani tonight. That was a good time before this. Encourage you to listen to that if anybody's interested in the Chris Foster's broadcasting situation. That's been a hot topic in Blackhawks Twitter the last couple days. And yes, Cubs fans, let's be honest. We all have friends that like the Southsiders. We know they're struggling. They're ill sometimes. It takes a true person to enjoy pain to be a White Sox fan, which I think we can relate to a little bit here at Cubs, as a Cubs fan as well. But our Sox on Tap guys do a great job covering the Southsiders. Be sure to check them out as well. Again, ontapsportsnet.com, at OnTapSports on social media, the OnTap Sports Network. Go ahead and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Jake, this was a blast, dude. Literally, we need to do this again. We're going to have a ton of this all season long, too, for those that are curious. Dingers and Cubs on Tap, we're going to have a lot of cross cross show collaboration. I hope we can do some kind of, I don't know how we're going to do it, but some kind of like competition internally of something or another. Obviously, we don't want to steal the Dingers picks for you, but I will be in the replies every day, giving you guys my Dinger pick of the day.
Oh, yeah.
Next season, or I guess this coming season. Again, I forget it's 2023 too. Don't worry, you're not the only one, Jake. But man, this was fun. This was a true pleasure. And what do you say, man? We get out here, we know how. Here at Cubs on Tap. We'll hit him with a quick old. You'll learn, buddy. We'll hit him with a quick old "fuck the Cardinals."
I was waiting for you to say it.
and
go Cubbies.
And a let's go Cubbies, baby.
Go Cubbies.